Hi, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Green.
And I'm Vladimir G. Thank you so much for joining us. For the first time since President Trump's controversial condolence call, we are hearing from the widow of the fallen soldier.
She defended Congresswoman Wilson's account of what happened, saying the representative was 100% correct when the president told her that Sergeant Johnson knew what he signed up for.
What he said was...
The president?
Yes, the president said that he knew what he signed up for, but it hurts anyways. And it made me cry because I was very angry at the tone of his voice and how he said it. Like he couldn't remember my husband's name. The only way he remembered my husband's name because he told me he had my husband report in front of him. And that's when he actually said, La David. I heard him stumbling on trying to remember my husband's name.
What did you say to the president?
I didn't say anything. I just listened.
But you were upset when you got off the phone.
Oh, very, very upset and hurt. Very. It made me cry even worse.
President Trump fired back on Twitter this morning, saying, quote, I had a very respectful conversation with the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson and spoke his name from beginning without hesitation.
Aaron Blake is following the latest from Washington. He's a senior political reporter for The Fix at the Washington Post, and he joins us now. So, Aaron, what do you think the reaction on Capitol Hill from the Trump administration will be to the widow's comments and President Trump's response? I mean, the president is essentially contradicting what the wife of this fallen soldier, this Gold Star wife, this Gold Star mother, said on national television.
Yeah, this was kind of a predictable conclusion, maybe not conclusion to this whole saga. From the beginning, the version of events that was offered by Frederica Wilson, the Democratic congresswoman from South Florida, has been disputed by Trump. We now have a situation in which the widow herself has confirmed those versions of events. And so the president, because he always responds and hits back, he's, of course, going to take issue. In the tweet, he did not directly attack the widow, but he did clearly differ with her version of events, effectively saying that she's not telling the truth about this whole thing. And so this is a maybe predictable and inevitable conclusion to what the president started last week by basically standing up for himself and offering a blanket denial that he had said these kinds of things.
So this condolence call and the controversial fallout from it is something we've all been talking about since last week up until this morning. But I'm wondering about Trump supporters. Do they really care about all of this stuff? Do they need the president to be the consoler-in-chief? Or do they just want to see tax reform, a budget, health care, legislation passed?
You know, I'm dubious that this is something that is going to be a deal breaker for many people. Trump supporters have certainly stood by him through a lot of controversies in the past. He's hit back. He's attacked the war hero status of John McCain very early in the 2016 campaign. This is, I think, in this case, especially something that was a private phone call. They're likely to believe that maybe his comments were misconstrued. Maybe the widow took them harder than he intended for her to take them. But again, the president has not said that she misinterpreted me or that the congresswoman misinterpreted me. He has called this a total fabrication. He said this morning that he didn't struggle to say the widow's husband's name. And so we have a situation in which the president is offering a fuller denial than maybe he needs to. He could have perhaps put this behind him a long time ago.
Aaron, it is interesting that sometimes the president seems to issue and say things that are contradictory to things that he might have said in the past. For example, when he was on the campaign trail, he attacked generals, he attacked the military, he attacked John McCain. But this is a president who has surrounded himself with military leaders. Now, you wrote a piece in the Washington Post for The Fix that bounces off what Senator McCain said recently about those who were in low economic situations who were sent to fight in the Vietnam War. He always felt badly about that. And he referenced, not directly but indirectly, deferments, military deferments that students received during the Vietnam War, specifically bone spurs, which is exactly what President Trump received 5 separate occasions during the Vietnam War. Tell me more about your piece.
Right. So, we've just gotten off of a week in which we saw 2 former presidents, Barack Obama and George W. Bush, issue some not terribly veiled criticisms of Trump without using his name. Certainly McCain has done that before, criticized the president and his worldview without actually saying the word Trump. And this seems to be very much in that vein. He was giving an interview with C-SPAN about the Vietnam War. He referenced a very specific type of deferment for bone spurs. He mentioned this was used by high-income people, which the president certainly was at the time. And if you look at the record from the campaign trail, the president did indeed receive 5 deferments. 4 of them were for education purposes. 1 was for alleged bone spurs, which the president said was actually a pretty minor condition and eventually wound up clearing up. So, I think this is something that maybe wasn't a huge issue during the campaign, but has always been simmering a little bit beneath the surface. The fact that McCain brought it up, whether it was intended to attack Trump or not, certainly this cuts at the character of the president in a way that he's certainly not going to be very happy with. And
just jumping off what Anne-Marie was asking, which is the effect of these issues on Trump supporters. In other words, standing in front of the Wall of Heroes at the CIA and talking about crowd sizes, disparaging generals, receiving those deferments in Vietnam while knocking others who may have served during that period of time, like Senator John McCain, who he said, I like people who aren't captured. Those things do not have an effect on his base.
And also, just to jump in here, too, the very public criticism from John McCain and 2 former presidents in a short period of time. I don't know if is that of interest to his base? Does that have an impact on how they view him?
Well, I don't think that Barack Obama and John McCain are necessarily going to move a whole lot of Republican voters against the president. George W. Bush would seem to perhaps have had some goodwill left among the Republican Party base. Of course, he didn't end in office very popular, but he does have a good amount of support, according to the polls, from the Republican Party base. Look, I think that Trump supporters have in large part been kind of conditioned to believe that all of this is part of the deep state or the establishment, whatever you want to call it, going after this president, trying to take him down. It's all kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy and kind of a circular, a constant kind of self-reinforcing circle of criticism that the president's taking. And they've believed that none of it was terribly important before, and I would bet that they probably don't believe this is terribly important either.
Aaron, let's talk a little bit about the work that has to be done on Capitol Hill. We've got a budget, tax reform. The president wants this stuff done by Thanksgiving. What's the likelihood of that happening?
Well, Thanksgiving would certainly be a shock to get it done by them. I think that the White House has tentatively said they'd like to get this done by year's end. I think even that's a little bit ambitious. We have the holidays coming up. There's a lot of downtime on Capitol Hill. There's talk among some Republican senators that they want to be working more often to try and get these things done. But when you're coming up against that deadline, you have very few days of work. You have not a very big majority and questions about whether people will actually vote for this. These things tend to get drawn out longer than you intend for them. And for an example of that, look no further than health care. That could have been done right away. Some people thought it would be done right away. And here we are today, 9 months into the administration, and they're still talking about whether or not they can do it.
So will Aaron, the president, support the Alexander Murray bipartisan health care bill? What's it going to take for him to do that?
I don't know how he can support this bill after he initially said that these payments made to health insurers to cover these low-income plans amounted to basically a bailout for the insurers, basically pushing up their stock price and helping them reap huge profits. I don't know how you can say that and then turn around and support legislation that reinstitutes those subsidies. The president has certainly changed positions on things before, but he seemed to last week confront his own rhetoric on this issue, and squaring what he said before with the Alexander Murray deal is going to be very, very difficult to do.
Aaron Blake from the Washington Post. As always, Aaron, thank you very much.
Thank you.